There's a pretty rude saying that goes, those who can't do, those who can't teach. Well, I don't propose to teach anybody anything really, since I'm not a teacher in the sense of having a certificate to teach. I'm still a class away from my bachelor's degree. I've been asked by colleges to um, lecture, sometimes for as long as a half an hour. So I have done my share of open mic communication of what I think or have found in my research and study. And it's not real hard. A lot of people think of teachers as being mediocre. I disapprove of that view. I think what human beings do is settle for circumstances that are capable of sustaining them at their level best in terms of performativity of whatever makes them a person of worth in a social situation. And it's very difficult sometimes to sort out from the media how you can approach news and YouTube and Twitter, social media, and so forth from the point of view of education is distinct from entertainment, which the Democratic Party has a lot of difficulty knowing, on an intellectual level, knowing the Republican Party I don't credit at all, but the Democratic Party, it takes work to credit the Democrats because they don't know the difference between teaching and being a psychotic. Um, there's a lot of people who deal with authoritarian governments, and the United States has a very authoritarian government subculture. And of course, the entertainment media is all organized crime. So the sense that there's education at all, it has to do with a authoritarian subculture within a socially sustained feedback loop culture surrounded by organized crime in form of entertainment that takes its expression as entertainment. And a good example of this is the way the tropes play out for the common man. For example, on a personal level, I'm a deaf person, okay, and I had a neurotrauma. And the psychotics in the unit who fancy themselves intellectual decided to test my mettle by getting me arrested to see if I would endure 90 days in prison over a matter of principle. And they discounted neurotrauma. I mean, I ended up in prison for jail for about 3 weeks. They discounted deafness. They discounted the problems of protecting evidence. That was the worst and most egregious of the things they did because they're psychotics. Václav Havel seems to have meant well. One of his plays had a man who was arrested being defended by a party member who had made many compromises, and a man circulating a petition who had made far fewer. And the man in the party wouldn't sign the petition, but he wanted help for the same ends to free the man who had been arrested. And ironically, Havel, not being a psychotic, ended the play with the man who was a party member getting the arrested man free, not the ideologue with the petition. However, Havel was clearly advocating for the courage to sign the petition and advocating for the courage of, I shouldn't say ideologue, because the play's outcome and how it operated contradicted ideology in a way that was very humane. Havel lost one of his friends to the hard edge of things, Jan Patochka, an older fellow who couldn't stand up against Soviet interrogation. Well, people caught in the web that gets worse and worse in totalitarian societies to the point where Jews have to go along as get along, and they can't save any other, and they blame themselves if they survive. And yet they never meant anybody harm. They never did anything deliberately to hurt anybody, and they would have loved to have saved somebody. So when you look at people who are in societies like me, teachers who contradict themselves to keep their jobs, the Czechoslovakian intellectuals whose hearts were in the right place, and you look at situations like tropes for the common man. For example, I'm familiar with the horrible mind of Peter Gabriel. Fears made real. They're psychotic, horrible people who've done psychotic, horrible things to people and say that psychotic, horrible things are real. And so they reserve the right to visit them on innocent people, to put what they say is a spin of perspective on the world. I don't understand how anybody can find them anything but absolutely insufferable. And they claim that it's all in the name of John Lennon. Forget it. Short work of that. Forget it. I couldn't care less. So, what do you say about, the situation in the Ukraine? Well, it was brought about by negligence, by extreme mentalities. Now, you might say that's not true. The Ukraine were just living ordinary lives and Putin decided to invade them. And that's probably the closest to the most humane truth that there is. But behind the scenes, superpower prerogatives were impinging on the persona of the Ukraine, right and left. Ukrainian people said, look, we're just living our lives. And that was the truth. And they couldn't imagine anybody would want to shatter their lives when they were just living their lives. But the reality of the ideologues was impinging on the persona of the Ukrainian peace. And it came from both directions. And now they're suffering a disaster. And anybody with any sense wants that stuff. But when you look at Václav Havel's humane approach to Russian authority, you found that it worked. But the superpower logistical system was a cut and run on Václav Havel. It was a cut and run on Glasnost. It was a cut and run on the Velvet Revolution. And when you look at somebody like, they'd say, don't watch the Olympic, the Belarus. They cut me off from Twitter because I said that the Belarus people can can protest Lukashenko and get away with it, then why wouldn't they be allowed to participate in the Olympics? And they cut me off on Twitter. Don't say that. So my point is, when you look at, for example, there's a trope in my life. I like and admire Valieva, Camilla Valieva, and Greta Thunberg, and they're part of the same generation. And a lot of people are absent who should be present. And that's just the trope of my um, maintenance in Section 8. That's and the stuff about the Ukraine comes blasting at me. And the impingements of the power structure and the 21st century schizoid Green Party come blasting at me through this horrible desktop wired into the totalitarian organized crime of Hollywood entertainment media. And they use a hypnography and make veiled indications of inside knowledge and so forth. It's a Havery system. It doesn't have anything to do with the form. It's all talking sideways. And you say, well, Camilla Valieva is probably ideologically right wing Russia. She's not to blame for it. any more than anybody trapped in a situation that they would never be able to stand up to or escape is not to blame for it. My not being able to endure 90 days in prison when I had a neurological implant is something that only a psychotic would think I was to blame for. And yet Seattle does blame me for it and says we measure your worth as a member of a sublime party of rip-off artists who are in and out of anybody's pockets, who they say they have something over. They used to say, you know, I was fungus among us and stuff. And they, if I so much as ask them to repeat something, they either punch me in the mouth or say that I'm pushy, getting in front of the line, think I'm special. It's a word. It's everybody is sorry that there's been a catastrophe in the 20th century of two world wars that left our leadership deranged with military messages and spending. Everybody is sorry that the Millionaire Club doesn't have enough money. Everybody is sorry that there's arguments about whether there's room for appeals from immigrants and cultures that are struggling. Everybody's sorry about the gun traffic and the drug traffic and the violence. Everybody's sorry about the mining, illegal mining in the Amazon and the climate situation. We're all sorry about that. But don't make it so personal that you think you have the right to just abuse, exploit, and torture somebody because you're psychotic, and then make it out like you have something to teach. You don't have anything to teach. You don't have anything to teach at all. You don't have anything to say to anything that's humane or teacherly or addresses the trope of the common man at all. Okay, so I mean, so just reinvent the wheel and rock because nobody's buying it.